If I had to choose one old school FPS game over any other, I think I would have to choose the original Quake. The sheer breakneck pacing mixed with the very skill based gameplay combined with the satisfyingly dark and grungy gothic environment and setting created an experience that was both action packed but horror at the same time. There was no other shooter quite like it. As fantastic as the other titles of the day were, Quake was something special, and the game we're taking a look at today not only revels in the aesthetics of Quake, but is built on its very technology. Wrath Aeon of Ruin is an old school first person shooter being developed by Killpixel and published by 3D Realms and 1C Entertainment. It is being developed on a heavily modified version of the original Quake engine called Dark Places. It released on Steam in early access November 22nd, 2019 for PC and is priced at €20.99. The game is estimated to remain in early access until sometime in summer 2020. Like that of what it inspires from, Wrath takes on a dark gothic horror aesthetic that is combined with adrenaline-filled action, combining the two in perfect harmony where it feels like 1996 all over again. Despite its very dedicated resemblance to Quake, Wrath adds a few modern twists of its own, not only giving everything that was loved about Quake, but brings it to a whole new level. In Wrath, you take on the role of the Outlander, a mysterious figure adrift upon the ageless sea. He finds himself on the shores of a dying world where he is approached by the Shepherd of Wayward Souls, and given the task of hunting down the Guardians of the old world. The Guardians were once angelic protectors, but now have fallen into corruption, and are the reason for the destruction of the place the Outlander finds himself in. And so you set out to find these Guardians, killing anything that lays in your path in the process. As with all old school shooters, there is a plot to be found, but it is therefore nothing more than the building of the world and setting. There are no cutscenes, there are no walls of text at the moment, just a backstory and a ton of action. It does the job it is intended to, creating a dark world full of horrific creatures and a reason for you being there. But other than that, Wrath is a game that is all about the action. In Wrath, your objective is to battle your way through each level to reach the end where you'll find the seal for that particular level, in a very similar fashion to the runes in Quake. Throughout the levels you will need to find glyphs to open up locked doorways in a manner not different from that of the coloured keys in Doom. And of course it wouldn't be much of an old school FPS if it didn't have secrets to be found containing additional supplies to help you on your way. Unlike other games, there are also chests to be found too with additional supplies but require a key in order to open. It is good old fashioned FPS gameplay that has everything that any fan of the 90s shooter will greatly enjoy. Whether you're playing for the action or want to go on a hunt for all the secrets and to kill every enemy on the map, Wrath certainly has you covered. Throughout your journey you'll face off against an assortment of different horrors. The first is the Fallen, a zombified individual that shambles towards you attacking with its hands. The second is the Invader, a multi-armed creature with a cannon for an arm and a blade on another arm. The Wraith is a flying creature that shoots projectiles at you in a very similar fashion to the Scrag from Quake. The Afflicted are a humanoid creature whose body is covered in green gelatinous explosive cysts, which they use to throw at you. The Widow is a small but fast moving creature that rips you to shreds with its sharp claws. The Heretic, a flying three-headed entity of horrors that can both fire projectiles from its mouth and bite you with its razor sharp teeth. Not to mention sounding like something that came right out of Evil Dead. The Executioner, a juggernaut of an enemy with massive blades for hands. And finally the Stricken, a massive head full of teeth and cysts with an arching arm each side that both bite and spew out explosive cysts at the player. Each of the enemies has their own strengths and weaknesses with their design and how they impact the combat being quite intelligent. The Fallen are complete walkovers and weaker enemies like the Invader and Wraith are not so troublesome on their own or in small groups. But place a Stricken or two into the fray or a few Heretics alongside those weaker enemies and suddenly what was a pushover becomes a lot more dangerous, as you need to manage your targets all the while avoiding taking too much damage. This form of enemy placement begins to become the rule as opposed to the exception that it is in the early game, creating very intense gameplay as you progress. The enemies are well designed and their behaviour and roles equally as so, and bring the combat to a whole new level. Wrath wouldn't be much of a first person shooter if it didn't have some weapons. There are 5 weapons in total in the current build of the game, each with a standard fire and an alternate fire. There is a total of 9 weapons planned for the full release. Of those available at the moment, the first is the Ruination Blade, a wrist mounted blade with a quick slash for a standard attack and a charged attack for its alternative. The charged attack can also be used as a means of getting across large gaps and helps reach areas that are otherwise inaccessible by simply jumping on its own. Next is the Coach Gun, a 3-barreled revolver that can shoot either a single round at a time or as an alternate fire, shoot all 3 loaded rounds in one shot. Then there is of course the Shotgun, The standard fire of the shotgun is as you'd expect, where it fires both barrels simultaneously, wreaking havoc on anything in close range. The alternate fire, however, works a lot different from what you'd expect. By holding down the all fire button, the shotgun charges up and after a couple of seconds fires an extra powerful shot. Not only is it supercharged, but it also has a long range for taking out single enemies from a distance, and the projectiles can also ricochet off of walls, allowing you to kill enemies from around the corner. The Fang Spitter acts as Wrath's version of a machine gun, with a clear inspiration coming from Quake's nail gun. The standard fire causing the weapon to shoot at an exceptionally high rate, mowing down weaker enemies with incredible speed, but consumes ammo at an alarming rate. The secondary fire shoots 2 fangs at a time at a slower rate, but with lower recoil, allowing for better control. The final weapon currently available is the Retcher. The Retcher is a strange weapon comprising of a mixture of metal and organic material that uses cysts as ammunition, allowing you to return the favour to the enemies. The primary fire shoots a single cyst, while the alternate fire shoots 3 of them in quick succession. It is a powerful weapon, but not so effective on those that also use cysts themselves. The weapons in Wrath are immensely satisfying to use. Their design and the sound effects that go with them just signifies pure and utter raw power. Even the coach gun has a really hefty and impacting punch to its sound, despite being an early stage weapon that gets practically replaced with later ones. Much like with the enemies, the weapons too each have their own strengths and weaknesses. One weapon could be more effective against a particular enemy type than that of any of the others. For example, the Fang Spitter is very effective against weaker enemies, but not so much against bigger ones, with the exception of the Heretic, who is weak to the gun's secondary fire. When using the secondary fire against them, it completely immobilizes them as long as you continue to shoot or until they die. The Retcher, despite its extreme power, isn't very effective against the Stricken, but a well placed shot from the shotgun's alternate fire will make quick work of them. None of this is given to the player. It is up to them to find out what weapons and which fire mode works best with what enemies, giving the weapons a form of experimentation, adding depth to the combat. All the weapons in their 2 different fire modes have their own respective place within the world of Wrath. The only exception from my experience is the alternate fire of the coach gun. Perhaps it's just a case that the enemy it's designed for just isn't in the game yet, but based on what is currently available, I found the primary fire to be far more effective than the alt fire. Other than that, the weapons and how they're designed visually along with the roles they play in the combat are simply fantastic. They may not have the same level of creativity behind them as say that of a medieval, but the depth that they bring to the combat is nothing short of incredible, bringing the Quake style combat to a whole new level. It isn't just weapons that you have at your disposal, but artifacts too. At present there are 4 artifacts available in the game. I believe a total of 10 are planned for the full release. The first is the Soul Tether, which acts as a saving point similar to that of John Romero's Daikatana. Once in your inventory you'll be able to activate one at any time you wish saving your game. You will reload from that point of saving upon dying until you either use another tether or find the saving shrine. The idea behind this may at first be a little off-putting to some players, but in truth it isn't. There is plenty of soul tethers scattered throughout a level, and rarely did I find myself with less than 3 or 4 of them at any one time. So it isn't a case like with Daikatana where they're rare enough, nor is the difficulty of the game to a point where such a system becomes unfair. Instead of frustration, it adds a layer of tactics to the game along with some challenge. You're unable to simply just spam the save key every 30 seconds or after every battle. It works wonders, adding a small layer of intensity to the game and having to decide when you've gone far enough that it is time to use a soul tether, or whether you should progress a bit further before using another one. It works very well, adding to the game all the while being fair to the player in the process. The second artifact is the Cruel Aegis. This artifact upon use makes you temporarily invulnerable, but comes at the price of taking away most of the player's health upon use. It results in you having to choose over a temporary advantage and whether that advantage will last to a point where it won't end up killing you at the same time. The third artifact is the Life Siphon. As the name may imply, upon activation, this artifact temporarily allows you to drain the life from the enemies you kill. While active, the stronger the enemy is, the more health will be restored. It's a very useful artifact to help you during battles where a lot of enemies are coming at you from various directions, allowing you to restore health as you go. The fourth and final artifact is the Drowner's Apparatus. Again, as you may have guessed from the name, this artifact is used in regards to being underwater, allowing you to temporarily breathe while swimming. There may be only one specific area in the current build where this is needed, but it is certainly a fantastic item to have for more water heavy levels that are bound to come in later updates. Like with everything else in Wrath, the artifacts each have their own distinctive advantages to help out the player, but with the likes of the Cruel Aegis with great power, there comes a great disadvantage. With the exception of the Soul Tether, which you find as you progress, the artifacts are generally hidden away in secrets, with only the very occasional one being out in plain sight. Having the artifacts in most cases hidden away like this gives the player a real incentive to go and seek out the secrets. Unlike a lot of games where the most the secret will have will be some extra ammo or a piece of armour, the artifacts and the power they grant make it worthwhile. This is especially the case in the hardest difficulty, where the artifacts play the biggest role due to the player's need for them being ever greater. There were more than just one or two occasions where the artifacts made a huge difference for me and were what changed the battle from certain death to being alive and relatively unscathed. They add an additional layer to the combat, giving it an ever greater depth than it already has, making the gameplay of this old school shooter more detailed than that of most out there. There is a total of 4 difficulty settings in Wrath, which are easy, medium, hard and Outlander. Upon first releasing in early access there was only 3, but the 4th difficulty Outlander was implemented into the game with a later update. I initially played Wrath in the hard difficulty setting, and it very much felt like the game was missing something. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and it left me quite bewildered. It was only when I returned to the game and played it again, this time in Outlander difficulty, did I get the true experience I'd been looking for. It's only in the Outlander difficulty do you really get the true old school FPS experience, and if that is what you're looking for, no other difficulty will give it. The other difficulty settings are fine for those looking to just experience the game or have a very mild to medium challenge, but for those looking for the real old school FPS experience you'd get from Quake's Nightmare difficulty or Doom's Ultraviolence difficulty, then Outlander is the only way to go. With that said, however, having the difficulties is a fantastic option. It allows any player of any skill level to pick up Wrath and enjoy themselves. Whether you're a newcomer to the genre, a veteran looking for the biggest challenge the game can offer, or anything in between, Wrath is accessible to all. As a whole, the gameplay to Wrath is excellent. It is everything you could have ever hoped for from a game that not only takes most of its inspiration from the original Quake, but is being developed on the very technology that Quake was initially built on. The pacing is extremely fast and the combat action-packed and adrenaline-filled. It is an old school FPS that has more depth to its gameplay than that of any other, all the while making secrets actually worthwhile seeking out. Wrath isn't just attempting to be the next Quake. It is attempting to give everything that was loved about the game while bringing it to a whole new level, and so far, Killpixel is doing exactly that. In the current build of Wrath there is a total of 2 levels to play and complete. There will be a total of 15 levels across 3 episodes upon full release of the game. The 2 levels currently available are the Undercroft and the Mire. The Undercroft consists of a large map where the player will need to make their way through a series of graveyards and catacombs. The Mire combines a large swampland with ruined Gothic architecture and underground corridors and passages. Unlike most old school FPS, which generally consists of about 30 shorter levels across various episodes, Wrath intends on lowering the number of levels but making them much bigger and longer. As an example, a level in Dusk generally takes no more than 10 minutes to complete, and that would be considered at a slow pace. The first level in Wrath, the Undercroft, takes approximately 1 hour to complete on a first playthrough, while the Mire takes around 40 to 45 minutes. You could increase those times for completionists looking to find all the secrets. It is easy to assume that the levels may outstay their welcome being so long, but that simply isn't the case. Despite their length, the levels always have something new to show you, or use the environment or architecture in a different way that doesn't feel like you're treading familiar ground. While it is early days to make a definite judgment from what levels are currently available, they are each completely unique with their own environments and assets. I can see this vast change in level design continuing throughout, which will result in 15 very different and unique levels that, while long, won't outstay their welcome. As for the level design in general, it is very well done and follows the classic FPS rules to the layout of the levels. Much like with Doom and Quake, the levels are rather linear, but to remove that sense of linearity, there are branching paths that take you off from the main one. Sooner or later you'll always end up back on the main path, but the branching off adds openness to the levels where it never feels you're simply following a laid out path. It is a classic design, but it is a classic design done extremely well. It is clear that Killpixel have a complex and deep understanding of the level design from the game that Wrath's inspiration clearly comes from, and it really shows. Between the unique environments and atmosphere of each of the levels and the excellent design of their layout, they are nothing short of an absolute joy to play. If there is one gripe I would have with the levels, it would be that there are only 2 available right now. I think it should have the first full episode available to play from the launch of early access. 2 levels and under 2 hours of gameplay doesn't feel like much to play around with for the cost. Regardless of that one issue, however, of what is so far presented gives a fantastic first impression that leaves you salivating for more, and I certainly can't wait to see what new levels the developer has in store. Much like Quake back in 1996, Wrath takes quite a different approach to its atmosphere compared to other games in the genre. Unlike Dusk or Medieval, which take a more action-orientated approach with their atmosphere, Wrath goes full on with the horror theme. There's always a sense of darkness, death, decay and destruction about the atmosphere of each of the levels, and the horror lays around every corner. To intensify this sense of horror, a fitting soundtrack accompanies it, acting more like a dark ambience as opposed to a music track. tracks do have the odd action note to them to complement the combat and fast pacing of the game, but the horror is definitely dominant over anything else. It is exactly the approach id Software took, and it is working for Wrath like it works for Quake. It is that horror theme that will separate Wrath from the others, giving it a special place in the modern old school inspired FPS scene, just as it did for Quake back in 1996. Wrath Aeon of Ruin is an absolute marvel of a game, and the team of Killpixel truly are the necromancers of the Quake engine. Not only are they creating a modern game on an engine that is over 23 years old, but they are pushing it to its absolute limits. Despite the age of the engine, Wrath is visually stunning. The sheer amount of enemies and the size of the maps are absolutely awe-inspiring. It truly is the id Tech 2 engine on steroids. Technological astonishment aside, as a game, Wrath is showing nothing but promise. It currently doesn't present enough that I could call it outstanding, but nevertheless it shows a very bright future. From the combat to the level design to the atmosphere, Wrath is absolute bliss, and is everything that fans of Quake could ever have hoped for. Back in the day, it was disappointing to see Quake 2 take such a departure from that of the original. In truth, it was only Quake by name, leaving a big gap to fill. While games like Dusk, Medieval, Project Warlock and Iron Fury have all filled in their respective gaps in the modern old school FPS scene, there wasn't one that could truly fill the boots of Quake. That was until Wrath came along. Wrath is looking to become the true successor to Quake that we never got, and as a huge Quake fan, I couldn't be happier with what Killpixel is giving us. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in the game and are considering buying it, you can support the channel by purchasing the game through the link in the video description below. For each purchase made through the link, I receive a small commission based on the game's price. Thank you very much to those who may support the channel.